So I'm making this video. I'm going to try to do this in one take without editing it, but it's probably not going to work too well, simply because I'm tired and it's hard to focus when you're tired like this. But I needed to reach out and personally say what I've been going through as opposed to defending myself, because the defense of myself is being projected onto a wall, essentially, and the people who I'm attempting to communicate with and use as a mediator to the outside public world are shutting me off, essentially making this possible. Um, but what I'm talking about is for the last 2 years, I've been in three separate locations across the entire continental United States. I've been being followed around by a group of individuals and a computer and an AI system that is torturing me in my own home, torturing me wherever I go, specifically with sound and frequency weapons, frequency guns, which are very real. They've been around for a long time. There's evidence that they're using frequency guns on the public population right now. There's governments that have been caught using sound weapons to control crowds, and there's countless anecdotes and countless bits of evidence over the last 10 to 20 years that sound torture techniques have been developed and are being used on people. And I'm unfortunately here saying that they are being used on people, and they're being used on innocent people, and they're being used on innocent civilians. And the population of America, which is supposed to be a free country, is allowing sound torture to be used on its own civilians. And I'm basically doing this video right now to give some sort of background as to what's been going on and what this is like. And I will try not to single anybody out or anything like that. I'm gonna have to at least point out how I got here. Essentially, I am from Boston, Massachusetts. I grew up around Boston, grew up in New England. I'm 34 years old. I'm almost 34 years old. And I grew up in Lexington, Massachusetts, which is a prominent town. Very, let's say there's a wealth differential out there. People go there and people bring their kids there just to go to the school system because it's one of the best top-rated school systems in the country. So I'm not claiming that I'm super smart. I'm just claiming that I was in a position to receive some form of education that allows me to at least perceptually understand things maybe a little better than other people. But that's just simply a comment on the education system of our country and not much else. But basically, I've lived a normalized life up until the age of 29, 30. I went to festivals, went to shows. I started going to music festivals when I was 18, 19. Absolutely loved it. Had a bunch of friends. Moved out into an apartment on my own when I was 20, 21. Lived a life. Lived with a girl. Had a normalized life. I worked. I paid my own bills. Did all this stuff. Eventually, I had to go back to my parents' place because of certain life situations. But after that happened, I got my shit together, and I attempted to start a business. I'm an artist, and I've been working on artwork for more than a decade, 15 years maybe. I'm doing all sorts of stuff. I have a business. I have a licensed business at this point, and I've had a licensed business for 5 years now. And what I'm here to talk about is there was an instance with a certain family in Lexington, Massachusetts that I grew up with, and I'm not saying that this is a direct response of me dealing with this family directly, but what has happened here is a direct response with whatever happened with them. And there was one holiday season 5 years ago where I was at their place, and I mysteriously blacked out while I was there. And these are close family friends, supposedly, that I have known since we played elementary school soccer together. Like, that's how long I've known these people, and these people have been in my life. And I mysteriously blacked out in their house, and I had, you could call it a certain episode where I got very frustrated, and I made some statements, not even to them, just in their house in general. And about uh, maybe a couple months after that, I noticed after I made these comments to these families and we had a bit of a falling out that I was shadow banned now online everywhere. My Instagram account completely shadow banned, Facebook shadow banned, right when I was trying to start a business. So I was getting, even my friends weren't seeing my posts. You could tell that it was being constricted, everything. I tried to go to other platforms from Meta because it was Instagram and Facebook I was trying to do this on. The other platforms behaved the same exact way as Meta did, essentially either banning me or only giving me fake interactions until eventually showing me that my account was shadow banned. And mind you, I was just trying to start a business this entire time. I was making artwork, you know, and eventually what happened is once I realized I was shadow banned, once I realized I was not going to go anywhere online for whatever various reason, I start openly discussing, like having a normalized conversation, because under my mindset, I'm like, okay, so if nobody's seeing what I'm doing, nobody cares about my artwork, nobody's seeing anything, well, we're just going to talk normally then. I'm not going to try to put on this face and play this game with these people where I'm going to sit there and basically placate their censorship and placate their clear favorability towards specific people for various reasons. And ever since that kind of started happening, like I hopped to X when Twitter became X, and ever since that's been happening, every single social media platform that I've made an account on for my business, for myself personally, I go on a new social media account, I try to start sharing artwork, I try to start doing this, and they ban me. They show me that I'm banned. They show me that I'm not going to go anywhere. And there's ultimately no reason for this. There's no reason at all. The only thing that was triggering this was that one circumstance where I had an issue and a falling out with this one specific family, and it is following me around even now. And the shadow banning is one thing, the social media things are one thing. It is at this point, because I have become vocalized about what I'm seeing and the fact that all of these platforms and all of these companies are working in tandem with each other behind the scenes, and they're working in tandem to censor innocent people. They're ruining and canceling innocent people, civilians, people that are just trying to make a living or have their life or create something. They are labeling as terrorists in the government, and they're being put on a blacklist, and they're being basically forced off the internet. And this wouldn't be too terrible if it wasn't a specific culture that they've developed, especially for my age group, the millennials and younger, in which our entire lives now revolve around the internet. Like, boomers don't give a shit. Boomers can go offline and they'll be fine. They don't fucking care. And this is not the same way with millennials and younger. Our entire lives were built online. So when you build up this culture of your life leaking onto the internet and onto your socials and onto all this stuff, and then you ban somebody from it, you're essentially banning them from life. You're reaching out into physical reality, and you're ruining their physical reality. You're ruining their real life connections. You're ruining their relationships. You're ruining everything. And they're intentionally doing this. Highly intentional. Like, they know what they're doing. And they're essentially, what's going on right now is they have this system set up where if these people or one of these people or somebody connected to this back-end monopoly doesn't like what you're doing, they will tell their other buddies, and all of their buddies will get on their back. They won't require evidence or any information. They don't even want to know what's going on. They will just line up with them. They will ban people. They will ruin people's lives. They'll stop them from making money. They'll basically drive them into homelessness. They'll drive them into psychological disrepair. especially when you start looking at the algorithm and the feeds, because what happens is not only are you being banned, but you're also being attacked by the exact algorithm that's banning you. So it's essentially they're telling you you're not welcome and you can fuck right off, even though their TOS is supposed to be fair and everybody has an equal opportunity and an equal chance. It's just a lie. It's not true at all. And no matter what social media platform seems to pop up, that is what's happening, because social media platforms don't seem to gain any success these days unless they're part of this monopoly. This monopoly allows things to be successful. And if it doesn't, it devours them, and it takes their ideas and it puts them in their own mechanisms and usually ruins them. But it doesn't care, because at least people are still in line. And it's becoming increasingly authoritarian. It's becoming increasingly negative, malicious, malevolent. It's becoming increasingly personal and petty. And as more and more people that are in this monopoly realize that they can cancel people like this, they're continuing to reach out and canceling people for less and less reasons. Like, it's becoming more petty as time goes on. And what that amounts to is somebody sitting in a chair or their wealthy apartment or their $1 million home somewhere that operates one of the back ends of these platforms is ultimately deciding who lives and who dies. They're playing God. They are choosing to allow people to be successful or not. And it's based off nothing besides pettiness or a paycheck or somebody pulling the strings to politically attack somebody that is one of their opponents. And it's just it's grotesque. It is terrible. It is a complete negative mutation of what social media is and should be, and it's completely the opposite of the original intent of what the internet was supposed to be, which was a communicative sharing pool for all of humanity. And this is the opposite of that. But besides the shadow banning, which has been going on for 5 years or so, what is happening now is that because I have continued to be vocal, as they continue to keep me banned, I've been pointing it out. As they continue to do this, I gain more personal information about what they're doing. You know, like if anybody does something to you long enough, you'll figure out what they're doing. You'll figure out why they're doing it if you're paying attention. And at this point, what's going on is that they are past the point of just trying to keep me banned and quiet. They have reached out into physical reality and are now attacking me physically. And they're using sound to do it, because sound is very difficult to find the source of. Sound can be tuned so only specific people can hear it. Very specifically, younger people have usually a higher range of hearing. So that means the older generation, which right now the wealth gap is so immense that if anybody's put in this position, they're reliant on the older generation to somehow fund or manage things, because they're the only ones with the availability to manage something. And it's basically, unless you're already wealthy or you have connections, it's a death sentence. And it's what they're doing is they're surrounding people with sound, and they're using different mechanisms to do it. And these sounds are abrasive. These sounds are loud. They're very high pitched, and they are supposed to cause hyperacusis. And it does eventually, because what's happening is it's scarring your ears. It's physical noise, physical frequency, physical sound that they're either manipulating appliances to make, like manipulating fans or other electronic devices, or literal frequency guns, which have been being used by intelligence agencies and war operations for decades now. And there's countless bits of evidence to support this. And it seems like they are now turning it on the population when the population isn't doing what they want. And it's once again, it's a death sentence. Like they're purposefully creating a situation in which you are being followed around. No one else can either hear what you're hearing, and if they do, they notice it because they're also monitoring you and surveilling everything, because we're in a surveillance state already. Everything is being fucking watched at all times, whether it's public cameras, hidden cameras. You know, they for 20 years, and you can even look at old spy movies, which were accurate to some degree. They have cameras that are fucking microscopic. They have cameras right now that they can blend in with the wall. They can cover it up in the same paint. And you can't tell that there are cameras there. And there are fucking cameras everywhere. And it's not even expensive for them. It's cheap. They can make these tiny little cameras with tiny little Wi-Fi nodes that send out a feed to an outside network. And they can just watch fucking everything. And the surveillance system that they're using is how they're getting away with this, because they are watching the situation. They're following around specific people. And then what they're doing is they're causing situations to where that person can't accurately convey or show with direct physical evidence to another person who could do something about a situation. And they are not allowing those people to actually experience what that person is experiencing. So, for instance, like this really started happening when I was living back at my parents' house, still in Massachusetts, about a year and a half ago. And it was a sound that was popped up from the radiator, so the heating system in the house. The heating system in the house was fine, usually fine. It was a house we had lived in for decades. And some utilities workers came by one time, maybe like 4 or 5 months before this really started kicking off, and they added and installed a new bit to the heating system downstairs. And then lo and behold, 4 or 5 months later, there's this high-pitched sound that's creeping up in the background of the entire house. It's being pumped through the radiators. So all the radiators in the home are now leaking out this high-pitched noise. It took me months to even figure out that that's where the source was coming from, because all of a sudden you just hear something in the background. Your ears aren't trained to pick this stuff out, because it's not a normal sound. They're electronic, they're being developed, they're specific frequencies, they're spikes. You can record this stuff too. Like it's not just your ears creating it out of nothingness. Like you can record this stuff, and I've been recording this stuff. I have hours, days, weeks of evidence of recordings of them pumping this shit into my environment, because it's really all you can do after a certain point. And this is a good time to mention too. Having the issue with this too, and showing other people, is that the average person is not aware of their sound space. The average person is not able to pick out specific noises from their environment, because they're not tuned to do that. They're focused on other things. The only people who are really trained to do that would be musicians, it'd be audio specialists, people who listen to things specifically, and it's one reason why this sound torture is being used on specific purposes. I'm a trained musician. I'm a trained music producer, and my ears are tuned, extremely tuned, to pick out specific sounds. My ears are very sensitive to sounds in general because of this training that I've been putting myself through for such a long time. They know this. They're using this against me. They're using my own ears' sensitivity and my own training for my own profession against me to make this worse. And it's clearly intentional, and it's nonstop, and it's following me across the country at this point. Like when I was back at the home in Lexington and I realized there was a radiator making this noise, this was after months of investigation too. I had to unplug electronics. I had to turn breakers on and off. I had to take weeks out of my life to sit there and try to figure out where the fuck this sound was coming from, because the sound was popping in the background of everything I was doing. I could hear it through headphones. It was popping up when I was trying to sleep. It was keeping me awake. I was attempting to record things like with this microphone and a bunch of my music stuff, and the sound just pops up in the background, ruining the recordings. And eventually I had to stop everything I was doing and I had to figure out where the fuck this shit was coming from. And eventually, I was able to figure out it was the radiator, but this was after months of investigation. I got an EMF reader. I was checking radiation points, and I ended up finding a bunch of issues with the electrical outlets, and I will point this out right now because it's somewhat related, but and it relays into the monitoring system too. But I had to take EMF readings of the entire house, and I noticed a bunch of the plugs, the electrical plugs in our home, as the sound was kicking on, as I'm being shadow banned, as I am being followed around by the symbolism of the very family that I had the initial altercation with, to the point of nausea. So they were making it clear that it was at least somehow related to this instance and these people. And it took me such a long time to figure out where it was actually coming from. And by the time that I actually figured out that it was the radiator, my parents had got a new refrigerator because the refrigerator was making noise. Like, a bunch of other things were also making sound too. This wasn't the only thing, so it was kind of surrounding me at this point. There were sounds coming from outside, being shot into the back of the house from other houses. There was a very specific event that I call a ringer at this point because it follows you around. But it's a frequency gun, and it'll make you go deaf in one of your ears depending on what direction you're pointed to towards the sound. And you'll go deaf for about 3 or 4 seconds, and then suddenly your hearing will slowly regain itself. That was being shot at me in Lexington and this is Lexington, Massachusetts. This is the birthplace of the revolution that this was happening in. And people were shooting frequency guns at the back of my house in Lexington. And eventually what happened was it got to a point to where they couldn't figure out what was going on, and they would have had to likely have replaced the entire heating system, my parents, who couldn't hear any of this. Their hearing was out of their range. They couldn't hear fucking anything. So I was basically sitting there trying to explain to people who had no fucking idea what was going on, who had no way to actually intake the evidence for themselves or hear it, and they weren't even being affected by it. So as I'm losing sleep, as I'm trying to figure this shit out, as they're trying to drive me crazy with this, my parents are just like, well, we don't hear it. Can you try putting earplugs on? Can you play music over it? Why can't you just continue doing this? Why can't you just ignore it? Because they have no idea what it's like. It goes through headphones. You can hear it through everything. It's high pitched and intentionally loud enough to do that. And it's also being turned on and off at will. So even then, based on my behavior or the things I would post online on these shadow banned social media accounts, was affecting whether the sound would get louder or softer in the house. And my parents just had no fucking clue. They couldn't help me. It's like any traditional horror movie where the kid is being attacked by some sort of demon or ghost, and the parents just can't even fucking see it. It's exactly like that. And eventually what happened was they got to the point to where they would likely have to replace the entire heating system. So instead of going through that and stuff, I was only back there momentarily. I didn't plan on staying there for very long, but COVID hit, and COVID kind of canceled a lot of plans and pushed a lot of things back a year or two. And by that time, I had started a business, so I had started putting all my money into the business that I was starting. So I didn't have that much funding or anything to leave. And at the same time, I wasn't able to make any money from my business because I was being shadow banned. And unfortunately, for the space that I was in, too, my entire friend group was somehow rotated and revolved around the family that I had this altercation with. So, essentially, anywhere I would try to go back in Lexington, this person and these people would be there, physically, sitting right there, as if waiting for me to go make amends with them before allowing me to continue about my way, living a life at all. So I made the decision after essentially losing all my relationships, losing all my friends, making the decision to be, because you can't interact with anybody as this stuff's happening to you. You can't communicate it with other people. They'll think you're fucking crazy unless you sit there and you guide them through it, and you take the time and they take the time out of their own day to understand what you're going through, which nobody fucking has the time to do. Even my parents, like, I can show them all my evidence. I can show them basically everything. And at the end of the day, they're still going to have to snap back into their own lives. They're going to have to deal with their own problems. They're going to have to go back to work. They're going to have to basically continue on their day as if this isn't happening. So interacting with people becomes pointless. Because all you're really doing is inviting them into the world of shit that's being created for you by a separate outside group. And eventually I made the decision to move out to Arizona. I had family out here. I was going to move out here and start my business. I believed, at least to some degree, that I'd be able to move out here and I wouldn't have the same issue that the physical radiator in my house was having. And the family that I had the altercation with was extremely localized to the East Coast. Very fluent, very influential family, famous family. Like, you'll know their name if I say it, which is why I'm not going to say it out loud right now. And I figured if I moved out west to the West Coast, I'd at least have a better shot. And what happened was they sabotaged my car, my vehicle on my way out here. Let's just say my vehicle was sabotaged. I took it in. My vehicle never had an issue. I had a car that I personally had paid for the entire balance, besides the last like $1,000 or $2,000 of it. It was a $22,000 car. I spent most of my money over like 4 or 5 years when I was in my late 20s paying for it. It was kind of a mistake. And what happened was that car, before I moved out here, my plan was to come out here and start driving for ride shares just to pick myself up off my feet so I could start my business and start making money selling merchandise, clothing, artwork, which I'm still even now attempting to do. Like, you can see the stuff in the background. Like, those are clothing. That's clothing and bags and stuff I'm currently even working on. And I ended up taking my car into a shop out in Lexington, and whatever happened when it was sitting there, somebody fucked with my car, and it caused a situation in which my car stalled out multiple times coming out here. I had to get it taken into 3 separate shops along my route, and eventually I had to leave my car with all my belongings. All of my worldly possessions were in my vehicle while this was happening. And it wasn't a lot of stuff, but they were all the stuff I had. And as I'm driving out here, my car starts stalling out multiple times. So I'm driving from Lexington to Arizona, and I have to stall. My car needs to get taken into a shop, which takes either a day or 2 for them to look into, and a 3-day journey. I ended up having to leave it in Illinois because essentially it had stalled out 3 separate times. This is the 3rd time, and I was trying to get small fixes from dealerships, and nothing seemed to be working. So eventually I brought it into this place in Illinois, and or Indiana, more specifically, but brought it in there, and it had to get serious work done on it. So what I did is I decided to get a rental car and drive the rest of the way with my stuff with a rental car. And that just meant I had to go back to get my car at some point after it got fixed. So it essentially turned what was supposed to be a 3 to 4 day pleasant drive across the country into a 2 to 3 week long nightmare. Literally driving cross country, not sleeping, driving 11 hours a day. I ended up having to drive back there and then back again. So it was, I basically drove across the country And then as I'm trying to move into a new apartment, I had to drive halfway back across the country to pick up my car, and then drive halfway back across the country again to get back to my home. And what this did is it allowed them to maneuver an apartment, and it allowed them to maneuver a situation in which they were able to tamper with my apartment when I moved out here. And what happened is they put one of these they either it was either a specific device or they just tampered with the air conditioning system intentionally. I don't know which it was. It was being actively controlled with a remote. So the radiator back at the house in Lexington was subtle. It was obnoxious and annoying, and it was popping up in the background. And there were things outside, but it was subtle, at least by comparison. And this was blatant. This would turn on in the air conditioning system on purpose, and it would go from 0 to screaming, screeching, like a pressurized, like a pressure cooker. Like literally the same sound and feeling. You could feel a pressure whenever the sound would kick on. And they proceeded, for about 6 months that I lived in that one specific apartment, they proceeded to turn this sound on and off depending on what I was doing or saying online or anywhere else. They were stopping me from sleeping. They were stopping me from doing fucking anything. I eventually couldn't go out and work anymore because the car that I brought out here that stalled out, had all this work done. When it was back in Indiana, somebody went underneath the car and installed a high-pitched noise, or fucked with one of the parts of the car, so there was a high-pitched noise installed in the back seat. So now I'm out here, the air conditioner is screaming at me, louder than the radiator back in Lexington ever was. I'm trying to get work orders done on it, and they're specifically leaving the sound off so the maintenance people can't hear it. They never hear it themselves. They are pushing the work order because they just don't want to deal with it. They think I'm some sort of crazy scumbag because the apartment complex I moved into was, well, on the cheaper side because I was just trying to get out here. And they assumed I was fucking crazy. And they basically just told me to go fuck myself eventually. And they weren't even going to look at the air conditioner and try to fix it. They told me they couldn't do anything about it eventually. They looked at it once or twice after baiting me along for 3 months. Letting me just sit in that apartment for 3 months straight. And eventually I had to break the lease. I needed financial help to break the lease from my parents and leave because they basically just, it was a death sentence. That's what they were at least saying to me. And it was so blatantly being remote controlled, and it was so blatantly there just for the point of coercion or threatening me or getting me to do something. And it was debilitating to the point to where I couldn't drive, I couldn't work, I couldn't even maintain myself enough to get to a place to where I could have enough energy to go fucking like look for a normalized job. Which I knew at that point, if I had gotten just a regular job somewhere, they would have somehow created the same situation at the job, or it would have been under somebody who they had influence over and would have made my life a living fucking nightmare past the point that it already was. So what happened is I eventually, I broke the lease, and I eventually went out to a new place, which is the place I'm sitting in right now. And what's going on in this apartment is that the same exact thing followed me to this apartment. And I'm going to reiterate this. This stuff is recordable. You can record it. I have this field recorder. This is a professional field recorder. I was able to record this stuff with my phone, my cell phone. This thing picks it up very well. Very well. And you can record all this. It's not my ears. And as all of this is happening, you know, one of my parents is trying to convince me I have tinnitus. They're trying to convince me I have an ear problem. I have some sort of ear condition. I need to go to a doctor and get looked at. They're trying to push me into getting a hearing aid to block frequencies and sounds. So I'm basically debilitated, physically debilitated with a condition slapped on my forehead. They're trying to push me into this situation, and you can record it. It's not my ears. You can fucking record it. You can't record tinnitus. It's absolutely insane to have somebody be able to hear this stuff and be able to even show people this, and then have somebody be like, yeah, but it's probably just your ears. It's not. It's just not. And what's happening right now is this apartment is just as worse as the last apartment. It's a better apartment. It's nicer. All of the appliances are brand new. It's, I put a little bit more money down in order to live here because I at least assumed, bare minimum, that the maintenance and the work that could be fixed around it would at least be a little more manageable, as opposed to the last place that just didn't give a flying shit and told me to go fuck myself, which is exactly what happened. And in this apartment, there is the added benefit, I suppose, of an electrical issue. So what is going on is that the breaker box, and you can hear this shit too, and the breaker box itself is whining almost all the time. And the appliances all have this high-pitched noise. Brand new GE appliances all have this wicked high-pitched noise in the background of whatever they're doing. And the noise will get louder in all of the appliances in tandem with the breaker box also getting louder with its whining high-pitched noise. So anybody without even a degree or technicality can figure out that it's a fucking electrical problem. There's something throttling the electricity, which is causing the fans to overexert themselves. It's causing the refrigerator condenser to overexert itself. So how breakers work, the breakers are supposed to stop. They're supposed to shut off the electrical connection if the electricity is being overcharged. That's what a breaker's for. It's so it doesn't cause fires. If you get too much electricity going through a wire, too much voltage that it can't handle, you'll get fucking fires. It'll short circuit stuff. You'll have fucking problems. And what's happening right now is the electricity is allowing too much electricity to pass through to the appliances. This is in addition to the air conditioner itself having a high-pitched noise built into it, which I think might partly be related to the electricity. It could actually be entirely related to the electricity. I did not figure this out in the last apartment. I did not figure out if it was the electricity or not. It seemed to be coming straight only from the air conditioner, and even when the air conditioner wasn't on, it was happening. So to me, it seemed almost like some sort of separate third-party device that was just utilizing the vent system to make a sound. But here it's definitely the electricity, and it could also be a small device in the vent system too. But what's been happening is in the last 2 weeks, I've been out here for maybe a month and a half, and I was pretty good at keeping my location at least under wraps for a little while. But my parents came out and visited me, and one of them helped me move something here, the giant hutch behind me, which is like 400 pounds, so I needed help picking it up the stairs. And he ended up giving my address personally over the phone, and magically, within 4 or 5 days, maybe a week after my location was essentially publicly revealed, all of a sudden, there is now very high-pitched noise coming from at least 2 separate locations outside, being beamed at the patio, the sliding door, and being beamed at the window, which is right, like, you can't see it. There's a window, and it goes into a parking lot. But at this point right now, what's happening is that they're frequency guns. They're literally frequency guns. It's a little device with one of those little fucking discs, like a radar dish, and they're fucking set up somewhere, most likely in another apartment, because it would be safe and secure. And they're pointed at my fucking apartment. And they're being turned on and off on purpose. Once again, very specifically depending on what my online interactions are like, or even what I'm saying in this apartment by myself. And they're being turned on. And once again, I have fucking recordings of this. I have a whole shit ton of evidence that I just have to go through and start displaying. And it's obvious that I'm just being followed around and surrounded by this shit on purpose. And I don't know if you can tell. I didn't even notice this until I looked at my picture in this webcam right now. But I am skinny. I am gaunt. Like, you can see my cheeks are hollowed out. You can see the fucking bags under my eyes because they're not letting me sleep. I haven't been able to get a good night's sleep in a year and a half. They're specifically keeping me sleep deprived. They're keeping my energy low. They're specifically doing this shit on purpose because they're trying to coerce and threaten me into not talking about what they're doing. At this point, they just don't fucking like me because we've been fighting each other for years. So now they're just vindictive and malevolent, and they're doing this just to torment me. And the thing is, my cat's here. I showed you a video of my cat. They're doing this to my fucking cat, too. They're torturing my cat. My cat probably has it even worse because cats' hearings are more fucking sensitive. And they're torturing both of us on purpose. Like this, my ears pop. That's how loud and how pressurized this shit is. My ears are popping in this apartment, my own apartment. And what's going on is, like, I'm trying to continue my business. I'm trying to go out and work. I ended up needing recently. I've been accepting assistance for the last 7 or 8 months simply because of the situation I'm in. I personally have never accepted money. I've never accepted help from my parents or anybody at all. I don't like it. I don't like the concept of needing to ask for resources from someone else without working for it yourself. And I'm being forced into a position to where I need to take money from my parents in order to keep me afloat. Because if I didn't, I would be fucking homeless right now. If I didn't, I would be in some situation that would be physically fucking impossible for anybody to survive in. And eventually I had to get a new car because my vehicle was impossible to work in or even drive in. And at the same time, my car, because it was sabotaged, it started having a bunch of problems out here. So it parts were going, lights were coming on left and right. It was at 100,000 miles. Shit was just starting to fall apart. It was a German-made car, so the parts were fucking expensive. So eventually I got some help. I traded it in, and I got a new car, brand new car, with some help from my parents. They put that fucking sound and a sound frequency generator, the same one in the air conditioner, in the fucking car. So now when I'm driving that car around, even without the air conditioner running, it's not the engine, it's not any normalized part of the car will start making the same sound as my air conditioner. This is how I'm supposed to work. This is how I'm supposed to be making my money here. And it's combined with the sleep deprivation, it basically makes it not possible. And I'm at a point to where I'm still receiving assistance, and I have a business and a job that I actively am attempting to work on all the time. And these people it's a group of people who are doing this. It's a group of people who are behind the scenes of society. They don't give a shit about rules. They don't care about laws. They are, once again, malevolent. extremely malevolent. And I don't know if it's just because they're taking a paycheck or if they're just like that. It could be a combination of both. I'm not entirely sure, and I don't really care after a certain point. But what they're doing is human rights violations. These are violations of any human's rights. And what's going on with what's happening here, and it's impossible to deny once you sit in this for long enough and you understand what the purpose of it ultimately is over the long term. It's an in-house concentration camp. They are sitting here and they are torturing people in their homes. They're causing sleep deprivation. They're causing a situation in which you are forced to concentrate on something because something is constantly distracting you. When that noise kicks on in the background, your mind blanks. Instant dissociation. You instantly your mind recoils from the trauma that it's experienced because your ears have fucking literal scar tissue built up from this. And it's impossible to deny that this is what's going on. And it's impossible to deny that there is a very clear evolution of what's happening. It was a slight subtle noise from a radiator to a loud abrasive noise from an air conditioner to now the entire apartment is rigged, including the appliances and electrical appliances. It's entirely rigged to cause this scenario and this situation. And then you look at the fact that they're then surrounding the outside of the apartment with the same noises, which is forcing you not to go outside, but then keeping you in the same position inside. And it's obvious what they're doing. It's obvious where this came from. It's obvious where this is going. It's obvious what they're utilizing this for. And this is ignoring the psychological attacks on your social media feeds or in the algorithm, which is entirely manipulated by the very same people who are behind the scenes of society. And they're just assaulting your psychology as this is going on because they're trying to break you. That's what this is. They're trying to break you. And it's a human rights violation. They're attacking their own species. They're doing things that they know are terrible. They know what this effect is like on people because they've done the research. They know what this does. And they're doing it on purpose. And they're stopping me. And they're stopping other people because there's no fucking way that I'm the only person that they're doing this to right now. And they're stopping people using the shadow banning online from talking about it. So they're creating a situation where you're stuck and trapped in your own home, and then they're stopping you from talking to anybody about it. And they're just sitting there and just turning up the fucking sound until whatever end goal they want to meet is met. And I don't know how this could come across like anything besides authoritarian. It's past the point of authoritarian. They're reaching into your own personal space. They're not giving you any space where you could be comfortable or relax. They're not giving you a space you can be proud of to come back to. Like I don't want to move into a place and be attacked there and then feel any sort of motivational sense that I want to go out and somehow build myself or build this space. There's nothing. It's the complete opposite of that. And I've been out here for eight months, out in Arizona for 8 months, and I have gotten almost fucking nothing done. My business has, I've only been able to work on making artwork and clothing in the last 2 or 3 weeks. Because at least in this place, I have the space and availability to actually do something. The last place was cramped, very small. So in combination with all the sound and stuff, it it was not conducive to any sort of business or anything. And I was too busy dealing with whatever was assaulting my ears to even be able to begin doing anything. And I've been out here for 8 months. I went to one show, a music show, when I first got out here, met some cool people, but I'm not going to hit those people up because my fucking home is screaming at me. I'm not going to hit those people up because I'm fucking being followed around by people who will almost certainly latch on to whoever I talk to and ruin the relationship on purpose, whether that's by attacking them or attacking me. And it's inviting innocent people into a situation that they shouldn't be, that nobody should be a fucking part of. And I've been to one show and I've been to one festival, and the same thing with the festival. I went out to this festival and they followed me to the festival, but I still managed to have a decent time out there and I made some connections. But then when I come back from the festival, I'm not going to talk to these people because, once again, it's inviting them into this situation, this terrible fucking situation, which these people know is terrible. They know what they're doing. They are making it more terrible as time goes on. And like I don't communicate with anybody. Like all of my old acquaintances are disconnected. I'm not on Facebook, so none of us have any reason to stay connected. That's separate from them throttling my cell phone signal, which I've seen them do countless times. They're throttling my internet. They're controlling a lot of the information and a lot of the sites and stuff I'm even trying to look at and go to. They're following me around online, always tracking my IP address, turning off my services. Like, I don't have anybody to even talk to out here at this point because of this situation. And like, I'm not even lonely at this. Like, I'm not that kind of person. I always have stuff to do. I'm a creative. I can sit and create something for years. I could go shut off myself for 10 years, not talk to a soul, and I'd eventually be fine. But this is just, they're stopping me from living a life. They're stopping me from starting a business. They're stopping me from rejoining the community that I grew up in, because I grew up in shows and festivals and music and art, and they're doing it to torment me and torture me as they psychologically attack me with pettiness. And this is where the end result of that one singular altercation, which, by the way, I need to point this out at this point. I blacked out in these people's home for whatever reason, which I'm not even going to get into, but I blacked out in their home. I had a little freak out. I woke up the next morning at my house. I had to piece together what the fuck happened. I had a post from Instagram that was passive-aggressive that I had to edit and change because I was very upset at the time. And then I went back over to their house and I apologized. The morning after I did this, I apologized to them to their face. And they're still doing this to me. They're still 4 or 5 years later. Like, I'm not talking to this person. I'm not calling this person. I'm not interacting with this family because at this point I don't feel safe around them. And I shouldn't, because they've been attacking me this entire time. And in any circumstance where, and I want to point out, like, I don't have evidence I'm going to show anybody right now, but it's them. It's them. Their symbols and their names have been following me around this entire time. It's them. And it's been 5 years where they have chosen to ignore my apology for an altercation that wasn't even that bad. I basically just got upset in their living room. You know, family friends get upset with each other. Family friends have these issues. You don't attack them for 5 years and shadow ban them from all of society. There's something else that is seriously wrong going on with these people. Very seriously wrong. And I'm even now being forced. I have no option but to start doing what I'm doing right now, which is publicly talking about what's going on. And it's one thing they're threatening me against doing. And it's they seem to be caught in some sort of Chinese finger trap where the more that they try to wrench my perception and what I'm doing in their favor, the worse they're making this entire situation. And it's really disappointing, I guess, is what it is. It's these people were supposed to be my family friends. They grew up next to me. And the second that something happened that clearly it wasn't actually about that, they threw me off a cliff and are now basically ignoring my existence. And they're sitting here torturing me in my apartment for it. And I've even now I've tried to do something in which I can convince them to fucking stop. And they just will not listen. They do not fucking care. And it comes across as they think they're better than the situation, or they're better than me, they're better than my family. It comes off as if I'm some sort of piece of property to them that they can do with what they will, like I'm their animal or their pet who's misbehaving, and they're hitting me on the nose with a rolled up newspaper. And it's just incredibly fucking disappointing. And I don't know what they think the end result of this is going to be, because you can tell what they have been pushing towards me, which is death threats. They've been basically telling me they're going to murder me this whole time, as they've been attempting to degrade my health to get me closer to dying, just in general. Like, once again, you can see, I've been losing weight. My nutrition is bare minimum. I have very little appetite. I've had a medical marijuana card in Massachusetts for years. I worked at a dispensary. I had to smoke weed literally just to maintain myself in any way. I haven't smoked in like 4 or 5 days. And it's just, it's incredible how awful this is. And it's incredible how awful these people are being. And it's incredible, like, I'm an American civilian. I was born, I have a birth certificate in Boston. And this is an American family doing this to me on their own soil. And then turning around and then convincing in front of me, putting their family members' social media posts in front of me, in which they're communicating with the outside world normally, and they're basically just sitting there being like, ha ha, look, everyone likes our family, everyone hates you though. But it's just them keeping me in a box away from everything. It's not even true or accurate. And they're doing it so fucking intentionally. It's just like, if there was some concept of evil, this is it. I'm looking at it. And I don't, like, I'm going to continue existing and building my life and my career and continue working on artwork, even with their distractions, even with the amount of time that they're wasting, because they're just wasting my fucking time, ultimately. and they're mocking me for it as they're doing it. And I just, as long as people in general, which would be the people responsible for these social media platforms, the people responsible for creating the situation and scenarios that allow personal and pettiness, like personal problems and pettiness, to overtake reason and humanitarian rights, there's no fucking hope for anything, including their own existences. Like, they are driving themselves to hell while trying to convince me I'm in their version of hell. And there's no positive outcome from this at all. There's just none. And I'm just disappointed in them. I'm very disappointed in them. And they will take their karmic repercussions for what is happening here. And it's already happening. You can see it. And it's going to be spectacular in its horribleness. And it already is. You look around. You're in America right now, even the world, look around. It's happening right now.